Welcome back, y'all. For this backstory deep dive, we're going to be breaking down the build and concept behind Gulnag Rixnix, the goblin family man with a budding career as a Chronurgy wizard. If you'd like to follow along with this video, all of Gulnag's custom character sheets are available as a free download at the link in the description. And if you ended up here without first getting to experience Gulnag's backstory, that link will be found in that very same description. So, Gulnag Rixnix, husband of Margla, father of Selwig and Grillip, friend of the late wizard Kilgore and of Ramoth, the Eagle Owl familiar. A man whose life has taken numerous surprising twists and turns since he first picked up a bow and started a short-lived career as a guards goblin, and his story appears to be just getting started. A goblin wizard is going to be somewhat anachronistic in many or most settings, and that's not without reason. As both his wife Margla and the wizard Ruffian both pointed out, goblins tend not to live very long. Even left entirely to their own devices, 60 is about the absolute oldest a goblin will live to naturally. And in numerous worlds, attitudes towards goblins, or the nature of the dominant goblinoid culture, means that most goblins do not live safe, subdued lives. But that's just part of the challenge for Gulnag. Kilgore had enough faith in him to begin to teach him the fundamentals of the magic of time itself, after all. And in the short time he has been studying the wizard's craft, Gulnag has truly made some very rapid progress. He's confident that he can make the most out of however much time he has, even if he can't yet conjure more of it. And now that he knows he still has his family's love and support, Gulnag is ready to take on the world. He has a strong call to adventure, with hints of an important message to deliver, but what that message may be and who its intended recipients might be are something to be determined by Gulnag's player and DM, and based on the specific world our wizard finds himself in. While writing the story, in my mind the message was probably meant for the Harpers, and it's probably something to do with vague signs of someone or something attempting to magically alter the timeline, or otherwise manipulate time in such a way as to put a great many people at risk. This also ties into some theories I'm fond of, involving Vecna, the weird black obelisks that pop up randomly in 5th edition adventures, and the upcoming transition from 5th edition to 1 DnD, but others have already put out videos about it, and I'm getting mad off topic. Anyway, the point is that the world you're playing in may or may not feature the Harpers or a similar faction. Likewise, your DM might not want to introduce a looming threat of time travel in the background of any given campaign, or it might clash with the tone or direction of the game. Have a discussion, and rest assured that whatever you agree upon is fine, so long as you and your DM are both comfortable with it, and it provides a good reason for Gulnag to strike out from his home instead of just practicing magic in his backyard until he retires. Once he's out in the thick of things, you can rest assured that he'll be all too eager to get caught up in the next adventure, and the next, and the next. Wizards in 5th edition are truly the ultimate utility casters. With the exception of restorative magic, their spell list contains spells to support any of a number of playstyles in combat, as well as providing a plethora of out-of-combat options. Wizards can send messages and eventually entire adventuring parties halfway across the world. They can warp the minds of their opponents or the terrain around them for unimaginable crowd control. They can magically empower their allies and hinder their foes. They can conjure nigh impenetrable shelters, immolate foes with fire and lightning, and call upon forces from other planes to aid them in their efforts. And that's all without taking into account the wizard's choice of specialization. There's a subclass specializing in each of the various schools of magic, in addition to more niche specializations such as war magic and blade song. As a Chronurgy specialist, Gulnag is a student of a school of magic rarely discussed and known to relatively few practitioners, but most of those practitioners will be quick to tell you that there is no greater magic than chronomancy. And they may well be correct. For his part, Gulnag focuses on fulfilling a dual role of blasting enemies and controlling the battlefield via various area of effect spells, while also maintaining a small but reliable stash of support and general utility spells in his arsenal. And as a chronologist, he also comes armed with the ability to shunt himself or others into parallel timelines and to freeze foes and eventually even spells into a temporal stasis. Unsurprisingly, a wizard's spellcasting draws on their intelligence stat, and as is the case with the vast majority of characters, a decent constitution stat is highly desirable on our wizard. It helps him maintain concentration on spells, and with a d6 hit die, Gulnag needs every bit of HP he can get. With most of our points going into those two stats, turning them into a 16 and a +3 modifier each, we're going to break the usual mold a bit and turn Charisma into Gulnag's dump stat, sitting at a score of 9 and a -1 modifier. The odd number helps turn the stat neutral if Gulnag ever invests in a Charisma half feat for some reason. The rest of our points leave us with a +1 to both Wisdom and Dexterity, and a +0 Strength score. Wizards gain proficiency in Intelligence and Wisdom saving throws, and by selecting the Sage background, Gulnag picks up Arcana and History skill proficiencies. The list of skill options for Wizards is a bit limited, but Mr. Rixnix should get some decent mileage out of Insight and Investigation. Wizards have absolutely no armor proficiency, and only a couple of paltry weapon proficiencies, but Gulnag will probably be dead long before he would have to resort to a dagger or a light crossbow. And between his life as a goblin and as a sage, there are only so many backgrounds, okay? Gulnag can speak, read, and write Common, Goblin, Orc, and Gnomish. And the Goblin feature, Fury of the Small, allows him to deal his level and extra damage to a target, once per short rest. Now, normally when we dive into class features, we save the spellcasting feature for its own block of time at the tail end of our breakdown. However, because the Wizard's spellcasting feature revolves around their unique spellbooks, and because spellcasting is essentially their only first level feature, we're gonna touch on it briefly here, while still saving spell selection for a little later on. And as an additional note, Wizards follow a similar pattern as their fellow prepared spell full casters, Druids and Clerics. That is to say, at levels 5, 7, and 9, the Wizard does not gain any new features, only spells of a new level. We're getting that out of the way now, so I don't have to go over it 3 separate times during the rest of this video. Anyway, spellcasting. Unlike their fellow prepared casters, Wizards do not inherently have access to every spell on the Wizard list. Rather, they learn new spells when leveling up, or by transferring spells to their spellbook from a scroll or from another Wizard's book. As such, they're the only class in the game to have both spells known and spells prepared. And that means that they have to be a little more choosy with their spell selection than clerics or druids do, despite the vast spell list at their disposal. However, it's important to note that a lot of the fun and the power of a wizard comes from that ability to copy spells from outside sources. And this feature is entirely dependent on one's DM. Have a conversation with yours and make sure you and they are on the same page when it comes to an understanding of this mechanic and a willingness to incorporate it into the game. With all that said, the Wizard class does come with one more level 1 feature. Arcane Recovery lets a wizard recover spell slots on a short rest, once per day. The combined level of these recovered spell slots must be equal to or less than half your wizard level, rounded up, and no individual spell slot recovered can be higher than 6th level. A wizard selects their Arcane Tradition at level 2, and if for some reason you haven't picked up on it yet, for Gulnag, that's Chronurgy. This comes with a couple of features, the lesser of which is Temporal Awareness, allowing the diminutive Time Wizard to add his Intelligence modifier to his initiative rolls. Our second subclass feature is Chronal Shift, and y'all, I'm not going to outright declare this to be the single best subclass feature in the game, but I'd certainly argue that it's in the top 3. Twice per long rest, Gulnag can manipulate time around a creature within 30 feet of him as a reaction after it has made an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, and force that creature to re-roll it. Enemy just scored a critical hit on your fragile Goblin self? No, they didn't. Your Paladin just whiffed on a Branding Smite and blew their spell slot? Are you sure about that? It's versatile, it's free, and it can turn an entire encounter on its head or prevent the start of a deadly spiral towards the TPK. Our next class feature is barely that, but level 4 does bring Gulnag an ability score increase, and that intelligence is getting buffed straight up to a +4 modifier. We get another Chronurgy feature next, the level 6 feature Momentary Stasis. Using an action, Gulnag can force a larger, smaller creature to make a Constitution saving throw, and on a failed save, that creature is incapacitated and has its speed reduced to 0, until it takes damage or the end of Gulnag's next turn. We're going to rinse and repeat with our level 8 ability score increase by taking our intelligence to its maximum score of a 20, a +5 modifier. We ensure that all of our Chronurgist spells have the absolute greatest chance of success. And finally, at level 10, we pick up the Arcane Abeyance Chronurgy feature. And this one's another doozy. This feature allows Gulnag to freeze a spell of 4th level or lower in time, condensing it into a tiny mode of energy that Gulnag and other creatures can physically manipulate, enduring for up to an hour. The immediate implication is that Gulnag can now give the paladin a lightning bolt to put into his pocket, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. When a creature uses its action to release the frozen spell, it will use Gulnag's spell save DC or spell attack modifier, but the creature who released the spell is otherwise treated as the caster. This means you can save a fly spell for your fighter to use, and they will be the individual concentrating on that fly, leaving Gulnag's own concentration free for a control spell or utility option. And it's not just limited to fellow PCs. Any trustworthy creature can be given a spell for their own use. Gulnag's damned familiar can do a flyby and drop a gravity vortex onto a cluster of enemies. And they most likely won't be smart enough to immediately realize that killing the bird will drop the spell. The possibilities are innumerable, and if utilized properly, this feature can truly define an encounter in and of itself. Now, with all that talk of lightning bolts and gravity vortices, let's take a peek at Gulnag's spellbook. As we alluded to earlier, we hope that anyone playing Gulnag for an extended period of time has the chance to add spells from their environment to their spellbook. But we'll be discussing spells as though the ones he gains leveling up are the only options that will be made available to him. Wizards start off with 3 cantrips and pick up additional ones at level 4 and level 10. To start things off, we're taking Firebolt to function as all reliable and put out damage without expending a resource. Message allows us to send brief, stealthy communications over short distances, and Mage Hand provides some extra reach and utility for our vertically challenged mage. At later levels, Gulnag will add Minor Illusion and Mending to his list, both of which are pretty well summed up by their names. Gulnag also starts at level 1 with 6 first level spells in his spellbook. First off, we have Find Familiar, which brings his friend Ramoth into being and allows him to use her eyes to scout ahead, as well as utilizing her to give the help action to grant he or an ally advantage on a given roll. Magic Missile is reliable force damage that cannot miss, which does not seem like a major selling point unless you've experienced the soul-crushing feeling of missing 3 firebolts in a row. Mage Armor grants a bit of extra armor class to help protect the wet paper bag's worth of hit points that Gulnag calls his own, and Detect Magic does exactly what it says it does. If your DM allows Strixhaven spells, we'll pick up Silvery Barbs here to hinder enemy attacks and simultaneously grant advantage to an ally. If they don't allow it, take Shield as your reaction spell, as in case of emergencies, armor class bump. Finally, for our base selections, Grease is a simple bit of crowd control that doesn't require concentration. At level 2, we'll also pick up Gift of Alacrity to give one's ally a boost to their initiative rolls, and Featherfall for when someone inevitably finds themselves plummeting to their doom. Between levels 3 and 4, we'll add 4 second level spells to Gulnag's arsenal. First, we'll pick up Web for more crowd control, and Invisibility as a buff for yourself or allies. And then we'll grab Detect Thoughts and Vortex Warp. Vortex Warp can teleport either an ally or an enemy around the battlefield, but it is another Strixhaven spell. So if those are disallowed at your table, pick up Fortune's Favor instead, which essentially grants an ally advantage at a time of their choosing. Levels 5 and 6 mean 3rd level spells. Up first are Counterspell, an essential for any wizard involved in a caster's duel, and Fly, providing sustained mobility and speed to Gulnag and or his party members. Up next are Hypnotic Pattern, one of the best area of effect control spells in the game, and Lightning Bolt, because no one ever takes Lightning Bolt over Fireball, and it needs some love too. For our next 2 levels up, we're going to deviate from the pattern a bit and select a mix of 4th and 3rd level spells. At level 7, we take Gravity Vortex, area of effect damage and force enemy movement all in one, and Sending, which allows communication back and forth anywhere on the same plane of existence. And at level 8, we're grabbing the oh-so-potent Dimension Door as a teleport option, and Slow as a 3rd level area of effect that ties directly in with our Chronurgy specialization. Finally, levels 9 and 10 come with some very appealing 5th level spell options. We'll start with Hold Monster, which is capable of paralyzing any creature type in the game and granting allies automatic critical hits on melee attacks against the target. Gulnag's also grabbing Cone of Cold for maximum blaster capabilities. And our last two selections are Scrying, for secretly gathering information about a location or individual, and Teleportation Circle, to enable instantaneous, albeit limited, travel for Gulnag and his entire party. So, taking all that into account, Gulnag Rixnix may not be your average stereotypical wizard, but he's worked hard to get where he is today, and he's earned the title of wizard and the familiar and the pointy hat that come with it. Here's hoping that you came away with a good impression of our oddball wizard, and the knowledge to use him to dominate the battlefield and master the mysteries of time itself. A devoted family man who nevertheless felt called to aid a stranger and take up their quest, Gulnag has a long, perilous journey ahead of him. But man, oh man, is he ever eager to get it started. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to see more how-to videos or character backstories, check out the links in the description below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to stay up to date on more content and characters as we release them. And if you'd like to support this channel even further, you can find a link to our Patreon below.